think that's the one part of motherhood that I didn't expect was how terrified you will be for the rest of your life because you love them so much. And it's an awful feeling sometimes where you, like, I know for me, I sometimes sit and I'm like, I am going to be scared for them for the rest of my life. And, we have a neighbor across the street who's in her 90s and her daughter is in her 60s and her daughter had a stroke, and she came over telling us about it and she started crying. And she's like, I'm 95. I should not have to be worried about this. But she said, I am. And that's when it dawned on me. And I was like, I'm going to be feeling this way for the rest of my life. I'm always going to be terrified. But I think just for us, having witnessed our parents go through that, and I know for my mom definitely has that. It happened so quick. My sister had cancer, but she was diagnosed in May of 95. She died 3 weeks later. So it wasn't like a long journey of cancer. It was like, it was found and then the entire world just shattered. I was five. Yeah. So a lot of things kind of compounded on there. And my daughter, my youngest, is now the third. And my sister who passed away was the third. My daughter now has brown hair and brown eyes. She's the first out of all my kids to have brown hair and brown eyes. My sister had dark brown hair, dark brown eyes. So it's a lot of things aligned. And then even my oldest hitting 5, my oldest just turned 5 in December. Grief is a funny thing because you just kind of live with it, especially when it happens to you when you're little. You almost kind of forget that that's a part of you, and that you have it. But all of a sudden you realize how it comes out in little ways. But I know when my daughter, a week before she turned 5, I was in the car and it was a perfect morning and the morning was great. And we got off to school all calm. And I was having a conversation with her and I said, Cassidy, how old are you going to be? And she said 5. And all of a sudden, I could watch, I almost watched my brain unfold it while I'm driving. And it was like, oh, she's going to be 5. Isn't that crazy? What were you like at 5? Oh, wait, your sister died at 5. And then I imagined Cassidy having to live through that. And then I was like, oh, you poor thing. And then I felt just utterly heartbroken. Then I cried the rest of the drive to school and I couldn't stop.
We've all been put here for a reason and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I am so excited today. Before I intro my guest, and I might bring her in, just a couple things. I am back from vacation with my family. It's our spring break right now, and it was really fun, but it was also complete torture on the ride home. And thankfully, I dropped off my kids at my father-in-law's and they are there and he can be with them for a few days. And my husband and I will go to dinner and we will just spend time trying not to fight. Last night, we had a little fight and that was fun because we're both exhausted from driving to Arizona back to LA. That is not a fun trip, especially with kids. My guest today, Mary Hendricks, I'm going to introduce her. First of all, I'm going to tell you all, I am a super fan of this lady. She is a new podcaster. She describes herself as relatable AF, a relatable AF mom. Is that right, Mary?
Yeah. We can, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
She also, though, I'm going to just tell you, because I didn't tell Mary before we started recording. I found her, I think last year or something, and I've been following her ever since. And if you do not follow her, please walk, do not run, or run, do not walk is what I'm trying to say. Still tired, everyone. Her Instagram is so freaking funny, but it's also real. It's she does a lot of funny things on TikTok and Instagram, but she also talks about serious things and depression and anxiety and being a mom and all the things that I like to talk about on the podcast. She has 3 kids. Her youngest is, how old's your youngest now?
13 months. Yeah.
13 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And I watched her from from having the baby in the pandemic and following her, but she did this really freaking funny post.
Oh yeah.
About opening your windows in the summer. That's when I found you. And I literally was dying laughing because that's me. And I'm always so embarrassed because when the weather gets warm, I live in LA, so our windows are open pretty often, except lately we've had like the weirdest freaking weather ever. But it's so true. Like, I'm embarrassed sometimes to even say hi to my neighbors because I know that they think I'm psychotic. Like, the things that come out of my mouth and the things I say in my house, I almost like don't want to know my neighbors because I really am convinced that they know I'm psycho. Anyways, go follow Mary. It's The Very Merry Life, correct? Is your Instagram? And it is so funny. I don't know where that one post is, but it's this post she did about opening the windows during the summer months and just being prepared for like bad language and screaming at your kids to happen. It is so funny and so relatable. Go ahead, Mary.
I have a couple of those. I know this is a message to my neighbors one, but I had one where it's like you see me run to the window and you hear a bunch of screaming and me just saying like, what the hell sound was that? And just like closing it. Because that is my life.
You just
have
my
the life constantly.
You have the funniest, like you're so good at TikTok. Like, I have a TikTok. It's embarrassing. By the way, listeners, please follow me because none of you are. I think I have like 600 followers and I'm not very good at it. And it took me like years to figure it out because I'm older than you, Mary. But she is able to like voice over the things perfectly. And her facial expressions are so freaking funny. Just do yourself a favor and follow her because that's why I had her on today. I've been following her for like a year and I reached out to her and I was just like, you're funny, but you're also real. And I'm always drawn to people and guests that like to be real. There's too much phony AF, Mary, if you will. Stuff going on social media, like my life's perfect.
A lot.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the Instagram aesthetic. And I think we're slowly starting to get away from that, but Instagram will always hold the title for the crafted life aesthetic. And also the other thing too, that I'm sure you're seeing is like that whole term, the relatable AF mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was probably the first person to put that before it became hot, but now everyone is relatable.
Oh, that
everyone
must
is
be
authentic.
Annoying.
Yeah. Not so much. What's annoying is that it's crafted authenticity. That's annoying because you can kind of pick up on it. You can see what people are trying to be relatable, that they're crafting their content to look relatable because they know that that's going to go places when it's not truly a representation of themselves. If that makes sense.
Let me ask you a question about that because I find that too on Instagram. So most of my followers are on Instagram, or they obviously listen to the podcast, but I find that now with the whole thing, and I'm over the moon about people talking about their mental health. Like, that's why I started the podcast in 2020 when I was basically drooling and at my lowest point of my life. And, but what I'm finding now is there's so many people that I feel like are starting to talk about mental health, which is really great on social media, but also like using it in a way where it's just to either get followers or get attention. I don't know what it is, but it kind of, I'm hands down happy. The more people that talk about it, I talk about this all the time, the better we are as a society. But I do feel like it's so much like copycat syndrome. Like, everything on social media is like, you do a post and it's like you're talking about, like, for you, for example, like being a young mom and like, nursing and how it's kind of like the end of nursing. We're in two different cycles of momhood, by the way, and we're going to touch on that because I'm going into like teen mode and tween, and you have three littles, and there's two totally different stages, but we'll talk about that in a second. But I would love to get your input on that because it does kind of bother me if I do a post and I'm kind of like really emotional about something, but then I'll notice like somebody will do the exact same post and I don't know. It seems inauthentic and it kind of drives me
Well, it
a little
is.
bonkers.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
Mental health, unfortunately, is becoming trendy.
Right? I know.
Especially in the motherhood space, mom content in general is its own little niche. And it's great because, when I say I'm that relatable AF mom, I don't want it to be in a way that like we are the same people, because obviously we're not. Like you and I are in two different stages, as you just said, of motherhood. When I think of relatable, I think of familiar. Like I want to feel familiar. I hope I feel like I live next door to you and that I could come over and or you can come to my front door and knock on my door and ask for a cup of sugar and stay for a glass of wine type of thing. That's how I want to feel in terms of relatable, where we identify with some basic struggles. But right now, that's why I'm saying like that whole relatable it's curated authenticity, it's curated relatability, and it's curated, unfortunately, mental health is a very, we relate on that. Like mental health is something that impacts a lot of women, a lot of moms, but it's something that's very easy to jump on that bandwagon and talk about, even if you didn't experience it. And it's one thing that people want to grab content. They want to grab content in order to boost themselves higher. And that drives me nuts. And with the content copying,
there's really nothing
that frustrates me.
There's nothing you can do. Like, for example, a friend of mine, this is kind of funny. I have always talked about on the podcast since I started about I'm done with thongs. Like I'm done. I don't want a wedgie anymore. Like I'm in my 40s. Like I'm good. I'm good.
You mean like you want like granny panties that go up to your belly like this?
Yeah. Well, I prefer a Hanes, Mary. I prefer a Hanes breathable brief. And those are my favorite. And my husband's like, you can't wear those anymore. And one of my listeners' friends reached out last night and she's like, oh my God, I love that you talk about that because I feel the same way. And then I'm kind of scrolling through Instagram and I see a stand-up comedian that's whole tour is based on, it's called, her name's Leanne something and she's Southern and she's so funny, but it's called the Big Panty Tour. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't steal her idea, but I mean, it's life. People are going to have like the same content as long as it's authentic, as long as it's real. Like I don't have a problem with it. It's when it's just like everything is copycat. Everything is like, the perfect family. Like, look at us by a barn, all wearing matchy outfits, like that's what drives me crazy. Really?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, yes, like that right there. And I think also like for me, one thing that if I can pat myself on the back for anything with my Instagram and the growth and all that, I started to do that because again, Instagram encouraged that was the aesthetic of Instagram and social media at the time was perfectly curated and perfectly crafted content. And I tried that where, I went on and I tried to start a blog where I remember I wrote an article that was like 6 easy swaps to make your house more clean. I am like the soggiest mom ever. And I like to say I'm like a soggy mom. I'm not a crunchy mom. I don't know what the opposite of crunchy would be. I'm soggy.
What is a soggy mom?
I will be hesitant on like what else? I'm hesitant to take Tylenol, but yet I just got back from a Botox appointment today. Like
I'm a soggy mom.
That's a soggy mom.
Soggy mom too. But like I won't. I'll get Botox, and I'll get like I'll drink. Like last night, I had a vodka martini, but I won't take an Advil if my back hurts because I don't want to combine. Yeah.
Or it's like you question, like, oh, let's. I'm trying to think, like, I don't want my kids eating red food dye, but yet I'm happy to have like dirty Shirley, like like stupid stuff like that, where you're a complete hypocrite with the things that you're doing. Where I drink Diet Coke and yet I want to make sure the detergent I put on their clothes is clean. Like it's silliness like that. So that's why I like to say I'm a soggy mom because I'm a walking contradiction with everything I do. But I tried to be the opposite of that and it didn't go anywhere. And the moment I started showing up literally as is, just presenting my chaos, then that's when my account grew. And I would take trends, and that's, people see trends on social media, and that's what they see one reel perform really well, and then they try and copy it. But the problem with that is that that's not their experience. So I always recommend to people, like, if you hear something that's trendy, think how it applies to your situation going on right now in your life. Like, how does it relate to you in some way to tell your story? Just use a trending audio behind it. That's all you have to do, and try and
Okay.
tap
Okay.
on
So
that, but
let's take a turn, because I could talk to you forever about, social media to me, and
Yeah.
I talk very openly about it. It's the best thing ever, and it's the worst thing ever. And once
Yeah.
your kids grow up and you have, like, for me, I have a newly 13-year-old daughter who looks 16, and
Yeah.
she's on TikTok like 24 hours a day. And I'm like, put your phone down, get away from it. Everything is like, I really think the Kardashians did the biggest injustice to our society, because everything's about like what you look like and looking perfect. And then, I already was like messed up as a teenager with my own eating disorder and my insecurities. My daughter is like exactly like me, but then add in the phone and add in like having to be perfect and the filters on TikTok and all of that stuff. So,
Yeah.
the reason that I love your Instagram, TikTok, like what you do, is because it's real and it's funny, and it's like talking about, which we're going to go into right now, being a mom, like giving birth. Like, you said you started it in the pandemic, and it just kind of like took off, and you're very real about the things that we go through, So tell me a little bit about that. Like, tell me about, by the way, your daughter is your youngest. All of your kids are cute, but the baby with the dancing and the song.
Yeah.
There's a song.
Yeah.
What is the song? Get Low.
Get low.
And just do yourselves a favor, everyone, and go follow her, because it's really funny. But anyway,
I'm pretty sure Little John shared it. So if you
he
follow
did?
Little John,
Okay, yeah, I don't.
He shared it to like Facebook, and it went like
follow
crazy
Little John.
viral.
Yeah, but it's so cute. I mean, she's got that huge smile, and it's really cute. So let's talk about being in the pandemic, being pregnant, having the baby, and like really being honest with your followers about what you do and what life's like as a young mom with 3 kids and struggling with that.
Yeah. So I had my first. So I have 3. They're 5, 3, and 1. So I had my daughter, my oldest, in 2017. So it was before the pandemic and everything. My first and my middle are 21 months apart in age. So we got pregnant like at 13 months. I don't even know why we did that. I think we were like in baby fever. We got snagged right in the cute zone, which is where my youngest is right now. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
But we had my second, went into that. My first was an easy baby, and I didn't feel too rocked by the one baby thing. Like I know some people going from 0 to 1 is a big life change. I didn't feel that way. With her, I felt pretty the same. But with my second, he was born, and 3 months later, the pandemic hit. And with him in general, it's all a blur. I shared the other day on my page, I just can't remember a single damn thing from his infancy. And sometimes it utterly shatters me. And I don't think about it a lot, because it's one of those things that it just churns my stomach, knowing that I can't remember, and I guilt trip myself over it. I didn't expect the 1 to 2 to be such a transition for me.
Mm-hmm.
I really just completely bottomed out. Like I had no energy. Even looking at videos of myself, I was just a shell of a human being. Like I had no energy, and I just floated through life. And then when the pandemic hit, the world was on fire.
Do you think that, like I talk about, there's different stages of momhood. And when you have a baby, or I have 2 and they're spread apart. One's 13, one's 9, 2 girls.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having 3 that close together. That's hard.
Yeah.
It really is. I remember to me, the young stuff, you kind of like put it out of your mind when they get older, and then it turns into like a nightmare in a different way. And when I say that, like, I'm just being honest. Like, being a mom is, I would never, like, I would never not be a mom. It's the biggest gift that I've ever been given in my life. I love it so much. I'm so grateful for my 2 kids. But then there's just a part of me that's like, when I'm with them on a car ride, I'm like screaming, like, shut up. Like, it's like you're constantly drowning is kind of what it feels like. And then you break the surface and you're like, oh, this is so great. And then you're drowning again. And it's like that in all the different stages. So to don't beat yourself up, because we forget things in life. And, you know, you have to be easy on yourself, especially in these young years. And to have kids that young, there's only one time in your life. And I sound like you're probably going to be like, shut up. But I would give anything for 5 minutes to have, like, my kids be young like that again. You know?
Oh yeah. No. And that's the thing. And I think that's with my son, I have come to a piece of it where I had no capacity to absorb the moment that was happening. I had to survive being a mom of 2 that I had never done. I had to survive what I know was postpartum depression. But of course, by the time I could get to diagnose, the pandemic hit. You couldn't get into anyone. So I had to kind of just truck through that and make my way through that.
When you say postpartum, because I had postpartum with my first and not my second, but I didn't realize it until like later. I just thought, oh, this is normal. Were you feeling like you couldn't get out of bed, like those kinds of feelings? And then on top of it being in COVID, I can't imagine.
Couldn't get out of bed. And I just but I did. I just made my way through my day, but I didn't get myself ready for the day. Not that matters, but I didn't get myself ready, which was something I like to do. And I actually just recently talked about that on my page. I saw you say that. I love getting ready. Like, I've always loved clothes. I've always loved makeup. I always loved just taking time for myself in that manner. And I just stopped doing all those things. I stopped working out, which I used to be a personal trainer. Like, I've always loved fitness. I've always loved doing things like that. And I just stopped, and I hated, I didn't care. Like, I did not care. And I just completely had zero energy for anything. And I remember being really sad all the time. I remember having multiple breakdowns. And just, I don't think I knew how to convey what I was feeling. I just felt trapped, like in some way, like I couldn't get a decent breath. And it was just hard, especially during the pandemic, because you just thought there was no escaping what the world had become.
And then how quickly did you get like there's an age gap. So you you were trying for the third, not for the TMI, but like if it was
no, she was planned. So 2.5. I know my son was 18 months.
Okay.
When we got pregnant with her, 18 or 19 months. So he was, at that age where he was a little bit easier. I think our life had kind of stabilized a little bit. COVID had started to trickle down. My husband and I had planned it, but we didn't plan it in terms of like with my other kids I had tracked, and we had, tried to get pregnant with her. I just said, let's not try to get pregnant, but also let's not try to prevent getting pregnant either. And of course, the moment we did that, we got pregnant the very first time.
Yeah, so that's how it happened.
It was just like, she was waiting to come on that situation. But I was nervous because I had finally felt like I found myself after that whole conundrum, like at 18 months. I felt really good. I felt really back into who I was. I felt like I had found myself, and that's when my page really started taking off. So that was like my creative outlet. I really, got back into running, and I started doing more things for me. And I felt like I got really back into a routine where I mattered. Like, I also was a part of the equation in that routine. And I was nervous when we got pregnant with our third. I was like, oh, shit's going to get rocked again. And
were you scared? Were you scared? Like, because we were still in the pandemic.
Yeah, I wasn't, surprisingly, I was not that scared of COVID per se. I will say I definitely experienced more prenatal anxiety this time around. I had a few different factors. So I'm one of 4. One of my sisters passed away when I was a kid.
Mine too.
So
I'm one of 5, but I lost a sister when I was little.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. Yeah. When I
Well,
was 5. So yeah, sorry that you're a part of that club with
no,
me.
me too.
But I lost her. So she was, at the time when she died, she was the youngest of 3.
Mhm.
So bringing in a third automatically, I think, kind of triggered something with that.
Yep.
And also everything went really smooth with my first and my second in terms of pregnancy and in terms of everything else. And I just had this unshakable feeling that something was going to give, and I was constantly on edge. So I went into my midwives multiple times thinking that something was wrong with the baby. Like I would call and be like, something's wrong. I need you guys to like listen to the baby. And I would go in and everything was fine. And finally I just talked to him. I was like, I I don't know how to explain it. I just feel like the other shoe is going to drop at some point. And they were very understanding. I think they kind of just knew. I felt too lucky, if that makes sense. I
No,
felt
that makes
like
total sense. I mean, I think that when you're somebody that's gone through loss and grief, especially as a child, I
yeah,
talk about being an ace a lot, and I was diagnosed with complex PTSD stemming from my losses
yeah,
as a child. That's all I think to be expected. It's funny you say
yeah,
that. When I was on my family vacation, I was, we were like out on our boat, and my kids were happy and water skiing. And I looked out at the water. This makes me emotional. And I just was like, because I'm spiritual, and I was like, thank you, God. Like, thank you
yeah.
for my family, and thank you for this happiness. But there's always something inside of me that's nervous that it's going to be taken away,
Yeah.
And
Well, and it's
so,
because we witnessed it. And that's the thing.
yeah,
Like I talked to my mom about that a lot.
yeah,
Because my mom obviously had to live through that. And
yeah,
you have children. And I think that's the one part of motherhood that I didn't expect was how terrified you will be for the rest of your life because you love them so much.
yes,
And it's an awful feeling sometimes where like, I know for me, I sometimes sit and I'm like, I am going to be scared for them for the rest of my life. And we have a neighbor across the street who's in her 90s or in her 90s, and her daughter is in her 60s, and her daughter had a stroke, and she came over telling us about it, and she started crying. And she was like, I'm 95. I should not have to be worried about this. But she said, I am. And that's when it dawned on me. And I was like, I'm going to be feeling this way for the rest of my life. I'm always going to be terrified. But I think just for us, having witnessed our parents go through that, and I know for my mom definitely has that. It happened so quick. My sister had cancer, but she was diagnosed in May of 95. She died 3 weeks later. So it wasn't like a long journey of cancer. It was like, it was found, and then the entire world
How
just
old were
shattered.
you, Mary, when
I
that
was
happened?
5.
You were 5.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of things kind of compounded on there. And
Yeah.
my daughter, my youngest, is now the third. And my sister who passed away was the third. My daughter now has brown hair and brown eyes. She's the first out of all my kids to have brown hair and brown eyes. My sister had dark brown hair, dark brown eyes. So it's a lot of things aligned. And then even my oldest hitting 5, my oldest just turned 5 in December. Grief is a funny thing because you just kind of live with it, especially when it happens to you when you're little. You almost kind of forget that that's a part of you, and that you have it. But all of a sudden you realize how it comes out in little ways. But I know when my daughter, a week before she turned 5, I was in the car, and it was a perfect morning, and the morning was great. And we got off to school all calm, and I was having a conversation with her, and I said, Cassidy, how old are you going to be? And she said 5. And all of a sudden, I could watch, I almost watched my brain unfold it while I'm driving. And it was like, oh, she's going to be 5. Isn't that crazy? What were you like at 5? Oh, wait, your sister died at 5. And then I imagined Cassidy having to live through that. And then I was like, oh, you poor thing. And then I felt just utterly heartbroken. Then I cried the rest of the drive to school, and I couldn't stop.
This is all so normal, and I talk about this a lot, is grief is a lifelong process. I lost my sister, I lost my best friend really tragically in my 20s. I lost my dad at 13.
I'm so sorry.
Grief, it's interesting you say that. When I turned in my 40s, what my dad's age was when he died of cancer, I was like, oh my God, for the entire year I was that age, I was convinced I was going to die. Or I lost him when I was 13. When my daughter turned 13, all I thought was please, don't let it, all of these things are part of the process of grief. And it is a lifelong process, but it also, something I remind myself a lot is the grief and the loss that I carry of my sister or my dad or my best friend, this is all also like what makes me like the person that I am and
Yep.
makes me like I'm a better mom and a better human because of it. And so when I kind of like think about it, I wish it never happened, obviously, but I try to like take the good things out of it. Cause I lost my sister at 2. I was 2. She was 9 months, but it happened
Oh
right in
God.
front of
Yeah.
my face. All of this
Yeah.
stuff makes sense. And so it also like just the postpartum anxiety, like that piece of it. This is all stuff that like people that have gone through like grief and loss like we have don't really understand that it sticks with you like it does. Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I
It will
also
stick
think
through
the
you. And
sensitivity makes like you like creative and funny. Like you're so funny. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Well, and I think that I agree on that because I was once asked to describe my personality, and I said I feel things in ways that I can't even explain. I'm very self-aware. And I think it's because of the shit that I've gone through. Like you, I have a sister and very close uncles and aunts that have passed away. I had 2 of my really good friends in high school pass away. Like all of that stuff. It's just when you experience it so often, you get a really dark sense of humor, which I actually kind of appreciate.
Yeah.
So I have a dark sense of humor, but also I just have like I have an earned perspective that I like to consider a gift out of all of that nasty, because I think that's what has allowed me to feel emotions in every sort of way. But also like it's the reason why I have my page. It's the reason why I do a lot of the stuff that I do and create the content I do is I hate that feeling of people being alone. And I know that feeling very, very well. So I think that that's like the push, if I can think of the silver lining, it was the push I needed to open myself up because I can understand it.
Let me ask you a question about that. So I saw you post, and when I say I'm a fan, I really mean it. Like, I hope you can tell. Like, I know all of your stuff. You posted something pretty recently about making friends and like friendships and how you like kind of have anxiety about, I don't know if it's the word anxiety is true, but just like something about along the lines of like not feeling like you have a lot of friends or you don't have a lot of friends because you're in this period of life where you're like, I'm not there yet. And I remember being in that stage. It was like Ron and I, my husband and I had moved from West Hollywood to the South Bay in LA where we live. And it was like a weird period where I was just kind of like my oldest hadn't started preschool yet. And I didn't really like have friends and I had left all my friends. So it was kind of like this period where I was just kind of feeling like really lonely, but also like wanted to like wrap myself in the moment of being a mom, but just, it's a very weird feeling. So I would love for the mothers out there that might be listening in that are a little bit younger than me. Can you talk about that? Like what that's like?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the reel I talked about, but I talked to my husband about this because my husband and we moved to our area in New Jersey 5 years ago. And we moved away from like our friend base and my family is close. I have my mom and my dad and my sister-ish kind of, she lives in New York City. So it's about like an, hour train ride. But I don't have anyone else. I went to school in Indiana. I'm in New Jersey. That's where I was born and raised. I just happened to go to school in Indiana. So all of my college friends are out there. I don't have any nearby here. High school friends, I didn't really keep in touch with high school friends. It was just not something I did. I have a few that I would probably say hello to, but that's it. It's just hard. And my kids are still so little that my husband and I were talking about it. And what I referred to in the reel is that he looked at me and he said, there's friend building years and then there's family building years. And that is what we are in. And the reframing of that really helped me because it is hard. I am in the family building years. I'm in the years of, growing my family, of having babies, of nap times, of preschool and all of those things that really eat up my day. Like I am a stay-at-home mom. Technically I do this stuff, full time at the same time. I don't know how the hell I do it, but whatever. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I am dictated by naps. Like I don't leave the house very often because, you know, my littlest takes 2 naps a day. And if I'm lucky, I can get my middle to take a nap and preschool drop off in the morning and pick up 2 hours later. It's just, it makes it very hard for me to find a friend group. And even when you do find a friend group, everyone in this stage of life is on eggshells because it's the formative years. It's like the formative years and everyone is questioning what they're doing versus the next. And then everyone's kind of tippy-toeing around each other because, you know, do you baby-led wean? No, I don't. Oh. Do you breastfeed? No, I bottle feed. Oh. Like, do you?
Like very judgmental.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, judgmental, but not even meaning so. I think everyone's so in their heads.
Yeah.
Where if they hear that one person next to them is breastfeeding while they're not, then all of a sudden they're in their head and they might be confident at home being like, yeah, this is the right decision for me. But if they hear someone else talking about it, then they're like second guessing themselves and everyone's secretly sitting back, just second guessing themselves. And I think that just kind of, it's very hard to navigate when you're, you know, trying to figure it out.
I wish I could go back to that time. I say that a lot. During those preschool years is when I met, like, you know, our new, like, we're not friends anymore, but we established like a friend group. And then it was like everybody like goes to the beach together in big giant families and everybody goes on vacation together and everybody this. And I started to care way too much about like my friend group over my kids. And then that I have like, I openly talk about my bad friend breakup, but it was really hard. But I look back on those years and I'm like, I wish I would have focused a little bit more on like my family building years, like you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I was too caught up in like my stupid social life, you know, which really doesn't matter in the long run. Like it's great to have friends and groups of people that you do stuff with other families, but it's also important to really like focus on those years because you're never going to get them back, you know?
You're never going to get them back. But I also like, it's that time of life where they're hanging on you and they're dependent on you. Like, that's where I think like that those friend building years are going to come back. And as I'm sure you are finding out because your kids are teenagers now, like they don't need us as much. So we can actually dedicate a little bit more time for us to get out and reestablish ourselves in that area. And also like, I'm not the same person I was a year ago. Like I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. Like I am constantly shifting because being a mom of 3 now, I'm a completely different person than I was when I was a mom of 2 and a mom of 1 and a mom of 0. Like it's one of those things where I'm not the same person. Obviously I was not the same person I was when I was in high school, but I'm definitely not the same person I was when I was in college. And I think once my kids are a little bit older and I'm starting to see it now, I'm confidently settling into who I am like, and I'm going to just keep on going from there on out.
Yeah.
And everything.
What is like kind of your end goal with this? Like, do you want to like keep growing and like you just added the podcast? Cause I think what you do is really important. And just to like circle backwards a little bit, we talked about, in the beginning, like some of like the postpartum stuff, but also I don't know if you're experiencing this, but we had touched on it. I know that it was like a grieving period for me with my last, to know that, I mean, she's 9 now and she's my baby, you know, and she's still my baby. But when I had to put like sippy cups away, or I knew I was done breastfeeding, like I was like one of those moms that was like sad about everything that was the end of a stage, you know? So I would be like, oh, like now I'm done with this. Now this is over. And I'm the weirdo that still has like Shopkins cups in my pantry because I won't get rid of them. So like tell me a little bit about that, because I think you kind of told me that before we recorded, or in the notes somewhere that I wrote about like the end of like nursing and all of that kind of stuff for you.
Yeah, we haven't decided whether or not we're fully done with kids. If you ask me today, then yes, we are. It's very hard for me to like definitely close a chapter. Like I'm not very good at burning bridges and just completely saying this is it. especially because my kids are still so little, and
Yeah.
also I'm 33, so I have time.
Ugh,
Like I could totally
you're a
have
baby,
babies
Mary.
if I wanted to.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
I totally could have more, but I'm also ready to like be done and get on with my life and keep on focusing and focus on whatever the hell this turns into. I don't know what my end goal is with all this. I hope it turns into more. At the end of the day, I really want the podcast to do well, and I really want, this to grow into something. What that ends up being, I'll find out as I go.
What is your podcast called, just for my listeners so they can check it out?
The Very Merry Life Unfiltered. So it's just like my
And
my
what
page,
do
but
you
it's
talk
unfiltered.
about on the podcast, just so people know?
So it's literally a representation of my life, but I bring on guests of, different moms, marriage, sex, and motherhood. So it's all different stuff.
Sex
But marriage
and Hanes
stuff,
for her briefs and bralettes,
Yeah.
cotton bralettes.
Oh yeah.
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 It's hot
Oh,
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
it's
wait
hot
till you
stuff,
get
yeah.
into your, I'm a lot older than you, but wait till you get into like your older years and you talk about that stuff. It's very exciting.
Dude, it's already. I'm wearing. Do you see what bra I'm wearing now? I'm wearing
I'm wearing a bra.
like
Well, that's what my friend Kristen.
It's like a sports bra.
Kristen and I were texting yesterday that I talked about in the beginning. She's like, Megan, I also wear bra. She's like, I also don't wear good bras anymore. And I'm like, I don't either. I wear like cotton bralettes and Hanes
Yeah.
for her. And my husband's like, this isn't what I signed up for. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I gave you
Too bad.
2 kids. Like, we're
Yeah.
good.
yeah, we're good. You're good.
Yeah.
That's my life. But yeah, no. So we haven't closed that chapter. When we stopped breastfeeding, we made it to about a year with breastfeeding, not by choice. I did not plan on breastfeeding that long.
No, you
she
talk
just
about how she was hard to like, you had to
She wouldn't take a bottle. She wouldn't take a bottle at all until the day after she turned 1. And all of a sudden I found a spare one in the back of our cabinet. And I was like, I wonder what she would do with this. Filled it up and she loved it. It was whole milk. So I don't know if that was the trick where she was like, this is delicious and let's keep on going. But she took a bottle and then I was like, okay, we're done. Bye. But I stopped breastfeeding and the moment she did that, I didn't even think about it. And I tried not to like, say like, this is our last nursing session or like this is the last of anything. I'm better off with stuff like that. And that's why like if she is our last baby, and I told my husband this, I said, if she's our last, I don't want to talk about it. I just want time to pass us by. And then one day we look up and be like, you want another baby? No, me neither. We're good. We're good. That's kind of just how I am. I can't think of like finality stuff. It freaks me out. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel the same, but for me, I knew it was the end. And it was very sad for me to be like, that's it, but I'm also somebody that's like such a weirdo. Like every stage of life, I remember when I turned 10, I was telling somebody this, I made up a song in my front yard and sang about being depressed about turning 10. So like, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think, well, again, I think you and I are very similar in that I think we just have a perspective on life. Like, I just think we appreciate life. And I think with chapters closing, I think I know for me, when a chapter closes and when things like that happen, it's a really swift kick reminder that life is really fast. And I think that's where I get tripped up a little bit and it kind of is like gut wrenching because I know I'm going to blink and this moment's going to be over and 10 years and I'm going to be having tweens and all that stuff and I'm going to be like, what the hell is going on?
It's true. And then as they get older, you realize 13 and then I'm like, oh my God, she's going to go to college in like 5 years. Like what the hell, so life just goes by very fast and that's why you always have to, and I say this a lot on the podcast, is appreciate your time and appreciate these moments in life. I would love to know how, like, do people expect, because I'm sure people like where you live follow you and see how funny you are. So for me, like, I've always thought I was my problem is I think I'm funnier probably than other people think I'm funny. So like I'll laugh at myself at my own jokes. Yeah. And my husband's like, that's not funny. Like I find fart jokes hysterical and I will like sit there and laugh for 45 minutes over a fart joke. And my husband's like, what is wrong with you? You're not funny. Like I was funny in the beginning. We've been together for over 20 years. Now not so funny to him anymore. But
Yeah.
do you find, like, for me, I find that my friends or like people I know always expect me to be like on and funny. And that's hard for me because I'm not deep down. I struggle and I'm very open with struggling with like my struggles with like depression. And I went through a period where I was suicidal and I'm very
Yeah.
open with this stuff. But it's almost like being like the dancing monkey before I really got real and came out with this podcast and talked about like my truth and like who I am and what I went through. Do you find
Yeah.
that people just expect you to be funny all the time?
No, surprisingly not,
No.
because I think that's what I've built in. Like my page, and for anyone listening, if you haven't followed up my page,
Yeah.
like
You talk about
it's
real
mom.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's laughs and pep talks.
Mhm.
So it's just you're gonna come and hopefully feel like my goal for anything, and like I always start off everything. It's like, hey, old friend, because that's what I want people to feel. Like I said, I want people to feel familiar to me, not necessarily like they relate 100% to me.
Mhm.
But I want it to feel like we're sitting on our porch and just talking. And what would you expect out of a friend? Hopefully, someone that's gonna laugh with you, and then cry with you if you need to and really have a heart to heart with you, and that's what I do and I'm really good at.
Mhm.
So thankfully people don't expect that too much of me. I think sometimes I expect that out of me more because I have gotten much better with it. Like the social media thing, it's been hard. It's sometimes very hard to be vulnerable and open on stuff that's really, challenging. Even last weekend I took off of social media and I took stories off, which I had multiple people just message me because it's not like me to do that. Just saying like, are you okay? Everything's okay. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm fine. I was a bitch. I was a cranky bitch last week because I was getting my period and I didn't want anyone to talk to me. And that's all it was. And I had a little bit of a meltdown with my family and I left the house and I stormed out and got myself a Coke. But I didn't want to get on because I had a moment like that, a very human mom moment where I just hit my limit. And the tough part about social media is you get on and either I had to get on and own what I was feeling or get on and pretend like I wasn't feeling it at all because I
Mhm.
wasn't ready to talk about it. And I don't feel like that's fair. I'm not very good at lying. I'm not good at lying at all, but I'm
Neither
not
am
good
I.
at
Yeah.
leaving that shit out. So that's why I was like, I'm just not going to get on at all because I can't get on and pretend like nothing is happening because something is just with me and feeling like a piece of shit that day. But I just stopped. But I think that's where I put more pressure on myself, where it's like the pressure to be happy all the time. Because I
Yeah.
think that's what people know me for, is being happy and upbeat and things like that. Where I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm a human. I'm a
Yeah.
human.
You're like, I'm a
So
person. How often do you have content? It seems like you have content like daily or every other day.
daily.
Wow.
On stories, daily. Stories, I'll show up daily usually. That's why last weekend was like a weird thing for me. And reels, I'll put one out daily. I can't. Someone had just asked me about that on I'm doing like a Q&A on my story saying like, do you feel pressure to put content out? I said, not from my followers, not from my audience, from the algorithm. Because if you don't, the
Well,
algorithm
I
screws
don't
you over.
understand the algorithm. And to be honest with you, I was so like stressed about like building my Instagram. And then I'm like, you know what? Like my Instagram is for my podcast listeners and maybe I'll build it and people do follow me because of the mental health aspect. But then I got to a point where I'm like, I don't need to like post all the time. This is just for me because it was just too much stress. And
Yeah.
mine's not like yours. But, and I
Yeah.
also don't understand TikTok. It's actually embarrassing if you go to my TikTok, everyone.
Yeah.
I'll just plug it, Judging Meghan. I think it's really funny, but like my daughter is mortified. She's like, Megan. She's like, Mom, that's not funny. Like, you're not funny. So anyway, it's like got to be like a full-time job coming up with this content all the time.
Yeah, it is.
How do you
It's
come
nuts.
up with like the ideas too? You're just
Great
very
question.
smart.
Yeah, I try and like think about my day.
Uh-huh.
I try and think about what I do. I think that just I'm not hyper vigilant. I'm just like hyper aware as to what I do during the day and what things I'm doing. And yeah, I don't know. I hear sounds, I go through, like if I'm doing audio that's like a lip dub or anything like that, then I listen to that and I'm like, well, how does this pertain to my life right now? Like in what way can I like make this sound like something that I'm dealing with. And I mean, when you have kids, you can relate something to that all the time. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't. I run out of content ideas, and that's when I'll just repurpose and take an old reel and just repost it.
How does your husband feel about it? Because I've seen he's been in some of the videos, and your kids.
He's a good sport.
Yeah.
He's a good sport. He supports it because he knows I enjoy it. He knows that I've been successful with it. And yeah, I mean, he's game for whatever. I think he's you know, at this point, we keep it as fun as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And you know, I keep it as healthy as I can especially with my kids and being present. I don't want my kids to know me forever, always having a phone in my hand, and I don't want to force my kids ever to be in my content. So that's the big thing with me is if they're not in the mood, then they just won't be in the shot. It's just not a big deal for me.
As they age, I'm warning you. Like, it's like torture to get my daughter in a picture. Like, I'm like, please, like, let me take an Easter photo, and she won't smile. Like, that's the kind of stuff that happens when they get older. It's really fun.
No, that's my life. So I don't even bother anymore. Yeah. Now we've gotten to a point where like my kids watch a lot of YouTube. So they see a bunch of people, like little, like there's some content like Ryan's World or something where my daughter 5, she grabbed my phone the other day. She's like, hey mom, can I get on and say, hey guys? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah, they want to start. My youngest wants to start a YouTube channel, and I'm like, that's not happening. But that's what they do. Let me ask you, in kind of in closing, and I hope I didn't fan out too much, but I'm being honest. Like, I sometimes feel drawn to people, and I might find them on social media, or I might meet them, or somebody sends them to me, or whatever it is. There's something really special about you. And like, I don't know, like when you're scrolling through social media, you just have this like amazing spark about you. So I just think I had to talk to you today because I think it's really important that we spread like awareness about what your messaging is, what my messaging is. What are some of the takeaways that you give like new moms or moms with like 3 kids under 5? Like, what are some of like the most important things that you can share with other moms that might be listening?
That it's going to be chaos, but who the hell said that it can't be? Like, that is my biggest lesson in it, is I think so much we get so caught up in that things need to look a certain way, and that we need to do things a certain way according to someone. I don't even know who that is. That we get ourselves all riled up, and the littlest bit of chaos, the little bit of mess, the little bit of anything that sways out of some straight line that we have set for ourselves, we immediately take as failure, and it's not. It's just not. And I don't know who created the rules for it. That's the biggest thing. I know for me, like I always tell every mom that I talk to, I was like, you have to think of what your end goal is. What is your end goal with your kids? Like for me, do you want your kids to be lawyers? Like, do you want your kids to be lawyers and doctors and get straight A's? Or do you want your kids to be really happy and healthy, confident human beings? Like that's, you know, I always think about that stuff, and you have to enjoy it too. So if like something isn't settling right with, you know, what you're doing, and it doesn't feel right, but it might feel right for your next door neighbor, then don't do it. Like, you don't have to do that. You do what feels good for you and what's going to make you happy. So that way your happiness trickles off to everyone else. I think that's the biggest thing. And then, you know, it's not all sunshine and roses, but it's fucking beautiful. Like it really is. If we really can stop and accept the moments of survival and just be like, yeah, I have to survive today. Tomorrow I may be able to really savor it. I think if we kind of just stop beating ourselves up over those instances of having to survive it, we'll really start to appreciate it a bit.
I love that. That's great advice. Well, I want my listeners to know that it's the summer months, about to be the summer months in New Jersey. So there might be some bad language being screamed out your windows. I know that if you come into my hood, I'm probably the loudest on my street. I definitely know my neighbors next door think I'm crazy, especially in the mornings when I'm screaming at my kids to get ready for school. That's a whole really fun time. But in closing, Mary, it was so lovely to have you on. I think you're great. You really have a gift. You're there's nothing better in life, I say it all the time, than laughter. And the ability to make people smile and is such a gift, and you definitely have it. So keep doing what you're doing, because you really make me happy. And like I say, everyone, be happy by making other people happy. Thanks, Mary.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.